Okay, so we're going to be doing some ridiculously easy layouts with Flexbox. Flexbox is a W3C standard for doing layouts, and it's so let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Carlisle. I'm UI UX geek, developer, engineer, architect, whatever. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I work at Looking Glass. We're a cybersecurity information management firm, and I guess if I were to have experience points, they'd be down here at the bottom, where it's just clients I've worked with in the past. So, first question, and I mentioned this earlier, another presentation. Never start a speech with Webster's Dictionary defines Flexbox as being, but I'll answer the question. I'll say, what the flex is Flexbox? It's a layout mode. All right, awesome. Thanks a lot. Y'all take care. All right, so it's a CSS layout mode. What the heck is that? I even had to kind of remind myself of the nomenclature for layout mode. So you're building out, you're writing your CSS, and you want to see how passive or aggressive an element is in taking space. You assign it as a block element, inline element, table element, etc., etc., etc. This one's new. This is display flex, and it's what it really represents. It's a flexible space allocation between parent and children elements. And I'm going to try to keep the slides at a minimum, or just kind of speed past them, because I'm going to explain this to you. It's one thing about Flexbox is it's a little hard to grok, but hopefully the moment where you get it, you're just like, oh wow, just have that epiphany moment where you're delighted. One of the things, so in addition to having children and parent relationships, we're working on two axes now. Usually when we're working with a responsive platform, so I mentioned responsive, that'll come later. Who here uses responsive platforms? Bootstrap, anybody? Foundation, Skeleton, make your own. There we go. All right, cool. Those are the thrill seekers, man. So most of the time with responsive, you are doing things top to bottom, left to right, because that's typically how elements stack within the DOM. With this one, it's multi-axis. You have really an X and a Y, and you can just do incredible things with it. So here's the illustration that you're going to see at WC3. And really, this captures it pretty well. Get my pointer, so there we go. There we go. Okay, so two axes. You have a main axis and a cross axis. This is typical of a block element where something goes left to right, but I'll set an example like you're trying to vertically center align something on a DOM. That is such a pain in the butt. That's just horrible. It's like you have to do this hack where it's like display it's table cell, and then you do a vertical align middle, and so we have this cross axis, so it gives us the power to really maneuver our content in a lot of really great ways. So I've already talked about some of the benefits, but let's just sorry, let me plug in my clicker. So general benefits. It's W3C standard. We don't need libraries. That's like, what, 200K off of the overhead we have to push out for a site, or however much. No libraries needed. It's when it comes right down to it, it's actually very simple. So it's easy to pick up on it. Like I said, once you grok it, it's amazingly easy, but it's kind of counterintuitive at first because it's not the traditional method of DOM handling, or at least they take a different approach. And what they do is it lends itself to an opportunity for tremendous creativity. I mean, I was trying to think. So what I like to do is I'm going to take you through kind of the driving 101 and the examples of how you can do Flexbox layouts. We'll take a portfolio, just like a web page, and we'll flex it up. And then in the end, I hope to have time to make a data visualization, just a quick bar chart using Flex. But I was trying to think of, I was a little disappointed in myself because I was trying to think, like, there's something I could show them that would just blow them away, like something that would expand like 8 ways from Sunday. But so benefit of Flexbox in the layout. So I mean, especially with responsive, we're doing a lot of inline block, we're doing a lot of floats and clears, we're doing clear fix hacks. People call it a hack, I actually like clear fixes, but no, it's just floats and clears are and it's just it's a hard thing to track sometimes. It's the ability to override source order with CSS. That's pretty cool. So I can put things on a page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I can with CSS list them out in any order I want to. That's where it's pretty exciting because usually you do something like that with JavaScript, and you say like, okay, CSS is starting to hop in the saddle and do things that JavaScript would usually do, which is just makes my life easy, which is fantastic. I already talked about vertical positioning with hacks. Equal heights. Something as seemingly simple as 3 columns that are horizontally arranged that are the same height. That it just comes very easy. So elements fit, they stretch. They stretch in different ways, depending on the properties you set. They flex, they stretch, and they shrink, and to fit available space. And I'll go into what exactly available space. That's kind of a confusing part of, or often misunderstood part of Flexbox. Excuse me. So, like I mentioned before, it's like we can. Those of you who the brave souls who custom responsive layouts. This is actually you can do custom responsive layouts in like just 5 minutes, write one up. It's awesome. And what this also does is it kind of takes us out of div land. So it's like, I just gave a presentation earlier about Bootstrap, and I love Bootstrap. But I get a lot of, you can tie Bootstrap to semantic and try to make it a little easier, but there's a lot of nesting of elements, and you just, you fly into div land. And with this one, like with Bootstrap, you would have a container, you would have a row, and then you would have columns within that. So that's already 2 levels of nesting before you actually get to your content. You have the instant parent-child relationship, so it's just one level and you've got what you need. So, final results. Come on. Yes. That's right. Pure awesomeness. Pure awesomeness. I was going to say legendary, but that was sounded a little bit more lame. So, okay, so Eric, you've told me this is awesome, 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 awesome. Nothing's that awesome. What's the rub? And there is one, or there's a few. History. So this is a W3C standard. They do not come to be very quickly. And sometimes there's some changes that happen from start to finish. This one has actually had a few, or it's had a couple. It's in 2009, you would say display equals box, and then around 2011-12, they changed it to Flexbox, and now present day, it's just flex. You would say display is flex. Another rub. Browser compliance. Holy crap. Browser prefixes. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is I'm going to use Firefox Developer Edition because it's really good at just handling the vanilla properties. I don't want to, like, we're going to all get information overload if we try to look at all these things with 6 browser prefixes for every element that we're wanting to style. But for that very reason, you probably want to hop on less or SAS and make some mix-ins. Like I did a quick Google search, and let's see if we can find it real quick. Flexbox tools. So yeah, just Google search, and I'm not sure if this is the best one, but yeah, just a mix-in where I can have a class to just do all the work for me. So definitely recommend going in that direction to just avoid driving yourself nuts. So speaking of browser compliance, here's where I want to vote. It works in just about every modern browser except for one. Would anyone care to guess which one? Yes, sir! Incorrect, but I'll justify that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the guest browser. It is the browser that must not be named. I'm just, no, this is not fair. I mean, it is true that Internet Explorer, what happens is if we go to the Can I Use, we've actually got pretty good compliance across the board. What happens is that with Internet Explorer, because of its market penetration, you still have to use previous versions. So in version 10, we're actually, let me see if I can zip back to it. They're using this one, this version. But in all fairness, at the time Internet Explorer 10 was published or was deployed, that was the going spec. That was what the W3C had out at the time. So yeah, maybe not such a bad guy after all. I mean, Internet Explorer 11, it's pretty good. So that being said, it's not done yet. I think it's in like the third, the last call working draft, and I think there are like 2 more stages or 3 more stages of final recommendation that go into there. So it's not like a final thing, but so Linus Torvalds, cheeky guy, said that standards of paper, actually, quote was, standards of paper, and I wipe my butt with toilet paper, and that's what paper's worth. And what he meant by that, I mean, it's a little crude, and I apologize, but what he really meant was that it really doesn't matter what is a written standard. Well, it does, but it also matters what's in the field. I'll give you an example. I used to be a Flash programmer, and I was writing an application where I wanted to play an MP3, and I wanted to do some open the MP3 in BitShift to find the ID3 information so I could get like the song title or something like that. And I figured, okay, that's a standard. I'll go in there. There are like 10 standards. It was crazy. So, you know, it's really, I was afraid of this at first, but I'm just remembering my experience, that if the browsers adopt it, go ahead and use it. I mean, they have sway as well. So, just a couple of slides left, and let's hop in some code. So, let's talk about this parent and children. I was trying to think of a joke like teenage angst or something like that, but we'll just hop into it. So the parent, okay, so let's just say we have a div. And even though I said everything was going to be semantic, I have a div that's a parent, and I have another div inside that's a child. So I am going to be able to assign properties to either one of those, and we'll zip through this and see this in code, to manage space with a flex layout model. So actually with the display, you can actually do flex or flex inline, which takes away, when you do flex inline, it's kind of like when you're doing blocked inline, and it kind of takes the ability to stretch, but there's some other things you can do with Flexbox, so it's not like a total, it's not useless. Flex direction, remember that multi-axis we were talking about. Things can be a row, things can be a column. Things can be a row where it's going this way, or a column where it's going this way or this way, which is pretty cool. Flex wrap. Just a way of handling handling elements that would break a line, like a float break. But there are other properties that make that really, really graceful. Justified content, it's how the children stretch different ways to fill the parent. Align items, it has to do with the main axis, and align content. Well, I think if we get into the driver's ed class, we're going to be able to get a better picture. I was worried that that would be a little too stale, and like I said, this is initially kind of hard to approach, or hard to grok, especially not without seeing it in code or seeing it on the screen. So, all right, let's start simple. All right, so I've got the parent, which is, can you see it okay? Okay, good. Which is this gray div that just has display is flex. And then I have three, let's see if they're divs. Yeah, so I've got divs inside. Sorry, I don't have inline code. I didn't want to crowd it too much, but on the CSS class, that's display is flex. So I'm going to switch some attributes on this flex direction. And so the default is row. I can also make it row reverse, where it's pretty much kind of like floating to the right, except I don't have to clear it, which is cool. I can put things in a column. Now you'll notice this stretches all the way across the screen, and a little bit later that'll make a little bit more sense. And we can do that the other way around. We can reverse that. So just like the row reverse, we can do column reverse. Pretty cool. So let's do wrapping next. So, okay, here inside of my example, I've got a ton of divs. And this is probably not going to fit on one line. Let's see if it does. Oh, no. This is terrible. That's why did I even do that? So, so right now, the default for wrap is no wrap, is what we're seeing right now. So this is just, you've got the parent acts kind of like a block element that has a bunch of inline elements inside. You give the flex wrap the wrap value, and now it starts to break lines. And again, you can say to yourself, like Eric, I can do that anyway. I can just get a div, and I can put div, or I can put inline or inline block items in there. It's just going to do that anyway. But there's some advantage that gives you with it. It's pretty cool. I can also do a wrap reverse, which is pretty cool. So now I'm starting with 1 and going my count up to here. I want to, we did flex direction just a moment ago. For the rest of the parents, I want to show you kind of how this multi-axis mechanics works, and how you can really be flexible with any of these attributes. So let's do the same thing, except this this parent div. Let's make that a column. And okay, it looks a little better because we're not screaming off the side of the page. Nothing's happening. Why is that? Any guesses? Who said height? Yeah. So, so the parent acts like a block level element. It takes as much height as it wants to, or it needs to. So what I'm going to do is let's say 400 pixels. Or sorry, I'll be cool and say 40 rem. Okay, so now we have no wrap. There we go. So now we've got something pretty cool. And now it actually goes in columns that go left from right, or I can wrap reverse it, and I've got columns that go right to left. That's pretty cool. And that's the advantage you get rather than just letting inline elements drop to the next line. And there's some other too. I'll show you that. So let's hit justify content, because this is where, I mean, feel free to ooh and ah if you want to, because that's always welcome. But, okay, so justify content. So the children, this is where you really see flex, or things stretch with the space they have. So right now, the default for justified content on the parent is flex start, which is pretty typical, just things start on the left. That's just like your block and inline example again. I can flex it to the end, and now it's on the other side. Where it starts getting interesting, I mean, there's a center, but you can also space between, which is pretty cool. And space around. So what it's doing is it's dividing this remaining space. I'll talk about remaining space and what that means in a little bit around this. Now think about if this were dynamic. If I were using JavaScript, or if I were using what have you, to dynamically produce this data. And sometimes it was 5 items, sometimes it was 6 items. You'd have to probably affect your margin, your padding. Well, not your margin, your padding, but you'd have to work out your percentages in your metrics on that. This just works for you, does it for you. Very convenient. So let's try this on a column. I'd say why is this happening? Oh, sorry. Bump, 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 bump. Once again, nothing's happening. So once again, I'll just go to my parent. Make it a little bigger this time. I'll make sure it's on column. Tell you what, I must have. Oh, there we go. It's my JavaScript. It's okay. So actually, I'm going to get a little bit bigger because. Okay, so now we got some space at the bottom. I'll end it. It goes down. I'll center it. Hey, now we've got vertical alignment within an element without doing a whole lot of. We're setting justified content, and we're making. I mean, there's like a million combinations to achieve the same thing. Vertical middle alignment, but that's just one of the ways. And same thing. We will do space between, and we'll do space around. So keep in mind, so with to really, I guess, just keep in mind the axes, because when we're doing things with a row, the horizontal is my main axis, and then up and down, that's the cross axis, where it's the exact opposite when I pop things in a column. So, align items. Okay, so this gets things on the cross axis. You'll notice I have my parent. I've already defined a height right here because I need to. But I'll align these. Flex start. Okay, that pops it. So this is kind of like justify content, except it's doing it on the cross axis instead of doing it on the main axis. So flex end, center, stretch. Stretch is the default. You recall just a little while ago that flex direction, I did column, and then boom, everything stretches out in the middle of the page. That's because the align items stretch, that's the default. At least yeah. So, okay, what's baseline? Baseline's pretty cool because imagine this were like use imagination just a little bit, like this was one of those bar graphs where you had bars that shifted up and down, where they don't exactly start at the axes, but it has a minimum value and a maximum value, and you've got several of them along the way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside, let's see, where am I? Align items. And I've got an ID on each one of these, E1, E2, E3, etc. And what I just did is I gave them different font size, padding and margins, and just mixed it up a little bit. So now I'll reload this. Oh God, that looks bad. Now, we do Flex Start, and it works. I mean, it's just taking into account that you still have margins up top. Same thing for Flex End. For center, it still takes those margins into consideration. Stretch is a little weird too, but check out baseline. Straight across. All the baseline of the font is exactly in the same pixel, horizontally. So, pretty cool. We'll try that on a column, and just about the same way, except I'm not exactly sure if there's really a vertical baseline on fonts. So I was kind of scratching my head on that. So, so finally, align content. Now here's another one of those examples where you have a block item, and you're like, okay, I can put these inline items, and it's going to break to the next line anyway. What's the benefit of doing flex? I could do that just with HTML without this. Align content assumes that you have content that's wrapping, that it really doesn't work if you have one line. But what it's doing right now, you'll notice that the children are a little long, is it's stretching them right now, just like we saw with align items. So we'll do a flex start, and now we're doing this with the entire thing. So now it centers, stretches, that was the default, space between rows, space around rows. So I'm just imagining this would take a lot more code or JavaScript to actually achieve this without that model. So pop back to PowerPoint. I promise I just have one slide here. Okay, children are the sorry. They're the most confusing ones. I mean, order is not bad because you're just defining what order. You can put child items in the source in a certain order and then signify them in another order, CSS. FlexGrow and FlexShrink. That's pretty cool. It's an appropriation of remaining space, and remaining space has a lot to do with this flex basis. It's not like a width or a height. It's not a minimum height. It's just what space is available based on what the dimension of everything is. All these children, and then you've got align self, which is kind of an override. But so now let's get off that slide. It's better if we're on this page. Sorry, the full screen mode just knocks the resolution out. So I have to put everything back in full screen. Okay, so order. This is pretty easy to demonstrate. I'll just bring up the. Come on, give me an arrow. There we go. I'll inspect this element and see that I have. Here's my example div, and it has these 5 children, and then I've just got a little JavaScript that appropriates, that just gives them a random number. Now, the reason I gave them a random number was actually on purpose. It wasn't because I was lazy and didn't want to take an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and then go through that and build an array of used numbers and what have you. So let's click it a couple times, and I'll just take a look at where we. Okay, this is good. This is a really good one. So can y'all see this okay? So let me see if I can pop that up some. Here we go. All right, so by picking a random number, there's only 2, I mean, it was either 0s or 2s that got chosen. So I'll walk you through kind of how this works. So the order 0 are going to come first, and then it's going to work its way up, and you'll see that 3 values have a 0, or three elements have that order of 0. So let's see, the first one is 2, and then 4, and then 5. Now, what's happening is that you're prioritizing the order specified by the property, and if that property has the same value, then you're reverting back to the source order. So I actually, so being that all these are the same, it's 2, 4, and 5. That's how they would have appeared, those 3 numbers, had I not put an order, and then I'll go to the 2's, and you see that the other one, 1 and 3, it works the same way. So, now, like I said before, changing orders on things, especially when you do it on different breakpoints on media queries, it's the potential to just really do a lot of things with CSS than you would ordinarily use JavaScript for. Okay, FlexGrow, and now that we're into the children, it's not we're not going to do like the column and the row stuff, because that's the parent was really where that was. I mean, these will just work horizontally or vertically the same way. So, FlexGrow, we have these 3 items that are 227 pixels, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to essentially proportionalize these, if that's a word, where these are now the same size. Now, this one is 3 times as big as as these 2. Now it's 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, and now I'll reverse it. It's 3 times, 2 times, 1 time. Okay. Well, you're thinking to yourself, okay, this is a ratio. You're saying that you can just multiply, and if it were just that, you would get into trouble, because you can't really. I mean, then you have to really take in consideration. It's like, what if this 314 isn't 314? What if it's 600? And that's going to make everything tremendously small, and that's going to really mess me up. So I have the flex basis. That's actually another property that I assign, and so let's say that the flex basis, is 500. So what I'm going to do is, oops, I think I have this in responsive mode. Actually, I didn't, but okay, so there we go. All right. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Okay, so flex basis. That means that I'm going to wait until these 3 items altogether fill up 800 pixels before I pay any attention to whatever's indicated for growth. So it's not exactly a minimum width, or in this case, it's shrink works the other way too. But so you can see that these. So I'll put it on 3, 2, 1. And I'll start to grow them. You can see that, oh shoot, are they growing already? Oh, sorry. 800 pixels. All right, let's reload that. Remember your metrics. Okay. All right, so let's just make sure. There we go. 147, 147, 147. They're all growing equally until I reach 800. And then I'm going to grow it, and I can see that. Let me just make sure. Check my console. Did my. Yeah, let's do that. Be able to see it better. I really suck that it didn't work, but no, I'm sorry, that one didn't work. That's kind of wacky. So what? I mean, essentially, what it was supposed to do. Sorry. is that once you reach that flex basis of 400 pixels, that's when the grow starts to happen. And the same thing goes with flex shrink. Shrink only really applies. We'll see if this one works. Flex shrink really depends on FlexGrow. So for this one, I'll say 500 pixels, and I'll do, now it's on a 111, I'll make it so that it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So actually, I'll do this one right here. So let me just check this before, because if this does not work, then okay. Well, I apologize for that. What happens is that the flex basis is really that tipping point. So 500 pixels. So these three items reach 500 pixels, and from that point forward, any remaining space, any space that the div has that's over 500, the growth takes place in that ratio. And then under 500 is where the shrink takes place. So we've got control over really just setting just a point at which we're changing the ratio of the content. Yeah, sorry about that. I've got a GitHub repo on this, so I'll make sure and fix this, pop it up, and tweet it out. But just the important thing is, like I said before, it all depends on flex basis. That's by default. If I go back to grow, the default is auto, so it's just going to do that proportion no matter what. It's really when I get a flex basis that it has sort of a conditional statement on it. Align self. So let me check and see. Okay, so all of these, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I've got E3 up here, which just, once again, I just gave it some height, some padding, and some margins. Baseline doesn't really do well on this one because, but this is pretty much, I've indicated center for my alignment on the main axis for these 5 items. Now what I can do is I can just take this and I can do an override on it. Now baseline doesn't really work, and I'm not sure why. What I would expect to happen is that this 3 would come down here, and maybe it's I don't think the margins are messing it up, but all right. So how are we doing so far? I mean, is this makes sense? Is this like total like Greek, or thumbs up, thumbs down, impressed? I got one thumbs up. Thank you. Awesome. All right. So let's see a real application of these. Excuse me. Let's see a real application. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build this portfolio site for this guy, Randall Porter. So let's see how we doing on time. We've got plenty of time. So I'll bring up my portfolio, and right now this just looks like a whole bunch of lists and paragraphs and what have you. I've staged it, of course. I mean, I'll show you just kind of that. These are actually in very carefully articulated containers. I'll take that out. So I've got this file, portfolio Flexbox. If I open that up, that's just empty right now. What we're going to do is we're going to put CSS in that portfolio Flexbox. Oh yeah, okay, that's the complete one. That's cheating. All right, let's go back to the portfolio. hope that sorry, I'll open Chrome because this dev version has been caching on me like crazy. It might be I'm using this HTTP server, and it may have some sort of caching rules that. Let's go to the same place. No, did I not? Did I not? Get out of here. Okay, cool. All right. So what I did at this point was I just threw in global styles. I haven't applied anything Flexbox yet. I've got a header where I've centerline a H1, some content. I've got an unordered list where I've taken off the list style type, and then I've just got some divs and some paragraphs. So here's this guy, Randall Porter. I am a UI and UX problem solver, and you read his portfolio, and he sounds kind of full of himself, but hopefully he can get the job done. So I've got 3 sections of the page: what I do, skills, and social. And let's make this a little bit more attractive using the Flex model. So first thing I want to do is, all right, this is all on this side. I'm going to want to, this is on the left side. So what I want to do, I'll take the header, article, nav, footer. I'll just center line that real quick, and that's okay. And then when I get to actually what I'm going to do is put a breakpoint on 1200. $1770. Actually, let's start cutting and pasting this in. This will go a little faster that way. So, so what I'll do is on my, so I've got 3 breakpoints here. I'll get rid of that for right now, and we'll just say that by default my header is aligned left. And this is just CSS so far. Now let's address this navigation here, and let's make it look a couple different ways. So I'm going to take the unordered list, and I'm going to make it a flex display with space around when I reach 768. Sorry. Okay, groovy. And now I'll do a little rearranging with my borders, my background. Now I'll explain this in just a moment. I don't think I need that one. Oh, it's because I'm using Chrome. Oh, shoot. Okay. No. Okay. That's why. Here we go. Okay, good. Am I? Yeah, I'm even in the privacy mode. That's weird. So take a look what happens to me now. What I'm doing is when I shrink this down. Initially, this is just an unordered list, and it's the LIs are blocks. Now I'm going to get to the point on a tablet where I'm going to switch the display to flex, and I'm going to say justify content to space around. So boom, now I've got even spacing of the navigation items. now, and I'm kind of doing a little bit of magic with the background and the margins and paddings, but as far as flex goes, that's essentially what I'm doing. So once we get the other breakpoints, it's going to do a flex end, and then it'll stay on that side. So there we go. Now I've got my max width too. That seems to be working for me. Sorry? Oh yeah. Sorry. All right, yeah. That's so. So the request was to go through the CSS, or let's go back to CSS. Let's walk through this. So so right now I don't have any rules by default. So I'm taking a mobile first. So I'm using my breakpoints. I'm using min width, and so by default I don't have any rules on. I've just somewhere in the global file it says that list is list style type is none. So it's just a list going down. Now when I go into my tablet over 768, I'm doing the display as flex, which will by default, so let's get rid of this line, and hopefully if it doesn't cache, we'll see. Okay, yeah, so right now it's doing a flex start. So, and I could do a flex start, flex end, but I'll do space around. And now, now I've got a tablet and I've got more room to click with my finger. We'll get to the desktop, and like I said before, I'm just doing some magic with the borders and the backgrounds and the margins. I just wanted to show that just so that's transparent and that's not confused for flex stuff. And the only thing I'm really doing at the end is I'm setting justify content to flex end. So that's when the navigation snaps on the other side like that. So that's good. Let's do that. Let's walk through the CSS after each one of these steps. So that was 3. Number 4. Okay, well, we've got the what I do. So so I guess this looks okay, but I'd really like some columns for this. Typically with a display like this, I'm going to start mobile. These will be stacked on top of each other, and then I might just put them side by side. So I'll do the same thing. And this really just has, I'm not really doing things with axes right now. I'm just doing it with aligning children. So oh, sorry. Okay, so now we're in flex mode. Now this is interesting because what's happening is we have much more content with this user interface development than we do with UX design and SEO. There's just more content there. I'm not sure what kind of magic it is, but I didn't have to use flex shrink. I didn't have to use FlexGrow, but without indicating that ratio, this is what I get. Really, I mean, remember when we put flex on a parent, the default justified content is flex start, so everything would be aligned to the left. But since this takes up the width of the entire screen, then there we go. I just thought it was neat that it takes up a little bit more space, and I was wondering how I would use that with flex shrink and FlexGrow, because that's why I put more content on the UI development side. Now let's take these skills. Once again, this is just, they're stacked on top of each other. And so that's my 768. I'm going to display flex and do a space around. So that's pretty easy so now there we go. Now notice that I did space around, and sometimes oops. And then over here it's stacks. So groovy. Seems like I had something in. Yeah. Sorry, what did I have there? Sorry, that really doesn't do anything. Let me get back to, okay, so let's skip on to social. Social is not really, I mean, really it's okay by itself because this is one of those situations, I mean, I can always give them, I can do space around and stretch it out or do things like this, but this kind of works on mobile or something like that. This is just going to make a, 4 and 3, and then I cheated by using 12 because it has so many divisors, but it's going to fold out. And it's going to be on that side. I'll justify the content. This time, I have to be a little careful. So I want you to see what happens when I'm going to take put flex on it. I'll take this back in just a second. So that looks right. I mean, space between. It goes, and that's what I'm looking for. But take a look when I start to shrink down. Oops. Oh, sorry. There we go. Seems like I'm missing, yeah, that's right. Flex wrap, let's wrap, and I'll justify content there. So now when I start to stretch down, it's going to pop on a different line, but that's kind of weird. I don't want that sort of, it's wrapping and it's doing the space between on the second line. So what I'll do is I'll take this wrap out. And this is admittedly, this is kind of happy path. What I did was that I'll put space between at this breakpoint so that pretty much when everything .768, I'll give it flex. And so there we go. I'm not using flex until I snap out here, and I've got a little bit of space that looks a little bit weird, but once I get to that breakpoint, then I start to stretch out and use that space allocation. So okay, so that's a portfolio. I was doing this one last night, so hopefully this one will work well. It's a data visualization. So I've got a bar chart example, and this is going to show a little bit more how we're going to, and rather than take chances, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right to this file. I'm just going to walk through rather than and building it. So getting into trouble for building it. So pretty cool. So that's just Flex that did that. It's pretty awesome. So let's see how we did that. So I'm in visualization file. What I did was I just made this bar chart CSS where I just have some helper classes in here. I'm doing some classes for colors. I'm just doing some alignment. Let's go back to our visualization. Sorry, complete. So we've got this chart body. That's pretty much the body of the that's this. 400 high, 400 wide, borders on the right and the bottom. It has flex with space around, so that the children, you can see that the columns are evenly spaced. Now, it gets a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to do my y-axis and make that display flex, but I'm going to make it as a column. So what that's going to do is those are items that go down vertically. And I'm going to style this y tick so that just I have a top border and I've got some spacing and some padding so that these numbers line up on the side. I'm using static heights on this for everything. So if I were to go back to my code, we'll see that like 300. All this is the class called bar. It does a flex display with a direction on column and stacks these up, and it has flex end applied to it. So these stack, and it's a column, and it's on the end vertically being the main axis at the time. It's pretty. What's that? Okay, cool. And all of these are just done so far. So it's like you can see the pixel height of everything just matches the number that's on those. So we'll just go back, and that's just really 100 pixels tall, 50 pixels, 125, and I'm doing the same thing with the y-axis. So what I'm doing with how I'm bringing this the x-axis into it is that I'm making the bar body, or excuse me, the graph body and the x-axis with all of these values a column. So I'm actually stacking those two on top of each other. Let me see if I can point that out in the code. So I have the column, I have the chart body, and then below that I have don't have it indented perfectly, but I have the x-axis. So really, this whole thing right here is a column, where it's stacked top to bottom. Now, how am I doing the y-axis? I'm actually just wrapping another div around this, and now I'm making, this is a column, and I'm nesting that column inside of a row. So you have, here's a container, and there's a container. So I have specified widths on the y-axis, but and the chart body, but everything else Flex takes care of just by both the positioning of the elements, how the bars are nailed down to the x-axis, and how both the bars are and the labels like the 2012, 13, 14, 15, they're evenly distributed. I didn't have to do any sort of positioning or pixel measurement. So that's what I've got today on Flexbox. I do apologize that the grow and shrink didn't work the way I wanted it to. Any questions about that, the flex or shrink or the flex basis? I think that, once again, I'm going to correct that on GitHub, send it out, and tweet that when it's out. And yeah, I think the example. I mean, we could see with portfolio, it was just we're doing different ways of doing horizontal spacing, and with the data visualization, we were what can we do with different combinations of columns and rows, and how can we align and attribute space. So if there's any questions, throw them out there. But thank you very much. Right ahead. Fantastic question. Okay, are there polyfills for Internet Explorer 10, did you say? Or older versions? Well, Internet Explorer 9 just doesn't support it at all. I'm not positive if there's a polyfill. There are some great blog articles out there about how you can make combinations of like the 2011-12 version and the one recent, so that it'll just do the same thing in the same browser. It's a little tricky, a little bit of magic happening there, but you'd actually be using two time periods of the same standard at the same time, and just kind of delicately using both at once. Other questions? Please.
Similar to his question, is there future plans to support IE10 at least?
The question was, is there future plans to support IE10, or I guess will IE10 have Flexbox, recent Flexbox support? I'm not certain. I wouldn't. That wouldn't be. Oh, it's not right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah. Pretty much, I did the mentioned earlier. Did all the examples in Firefox Development Edition. Because if I were to support IE, if I were to support Chrome and so far, I'd have to put in all of those vendor prefixes in front. So I'd have to use Moz and WebKit and MS and so forth. So once again, I wanted to keep the noise out. So I have no doubts that this site probably looks horrible in Internet Explorer right now.
What a few percentage of users on at least 10 through 9, even 8?
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's great. It's really great. Flex is really good. We have to accommodate for those users.
So the comment was that, you know, we stated earlier that we still have a market presence on 8 and 9 still. I think there's actually, somebody correct me if you do government work, I think there was some rule that Microsoft did for support and licensing that government institutions needed to raise the version of the browser for them to maintain support, which is awesome. I'm not sure what version, it might have been 9. I'm not sure if it was like 10 or something like that. I guess all I can say is that it's shrinking. Two things are happening. It's you have the half-life of all of Internet Explorer 8 and 9, and you have two things. You have all these browsers that are taking the place, more people using Chrome, Firefox, etc. But also Internet Explorer 11. It's actually, it hurts me to say, but it's a great browser. So I mean, this is, yeah. But 10, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. And feel free to tweet me, email if you have questions about this, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.